What's up guys, super cool video today. We got Accent Expert gives tour of US accents part 1. There's 3 parts to this guys. It's a Wired documentary series and I can't wait guys. The 3 parts should be amazing. Don't want to make this introduction too long, but basically, you know, I thought living in Ireland pretty much my whole life, you know, from the age of like 5 or 6 years old, that, you know, America was all just one accent. You know, I thought as well Canada had the same accent as Americans, Canadians had the same accents as Americans. I apologize to all the Canadians. You know, I made that mistake when I first met my girlfriend, guys. She's obviously Canadian and I thought she was American, and then she gave out to me a lot. She shouted at me, you know, she said that's not true. So I know a lot of the North American dialects can be the same, but apparently that's not true guys. Apparently they're all completely different. You know, apparently there's tons of different dialects in the US, so this should be an eye-opening experience. You know, especially when you talk about states, there's like 50 states in America, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of differences between them. I only figured that out literally 2 years ago guys. I'm terrible and I'm 28 right now. You know, in Ireland guys, if you drive 10 minutes down the road, someone else will have a different accent than someone else. Like, it's very crazy guys. There's a lot of different accents. You know, Donegal is different to Galway accent is different to Dublin accent, but I myself don't really have a strong Irish accent whatsoever guys. But this one should be impressive and incredible to see because I didn't know anything about it. And yeah, let's get it.
New York City, Trenton, North Carolina, Ocracoke Island, Mississippi, and northern Florida. That's where you get the sort of Blanche Dubois, Scarlett O'Hara kind of classical southern accent. Hi, my name is Eric Singer. I'm a dialect coach. Today we're going to take a little tour of some of the different accents of English-speaking North America. Now, a couple of quick disclaimers. These are by no means all the accents in North America or even all the English-speaking ones. And not everyone from the same place sounds the same. Accents vary by socioeconomic background, generation, ethnicity, and race, and all kinds of individual factors. Because, you know,
in my case, the individual factor would be staying on the internet too long since the age of 5 years old, listening to rap music all the time. Your accent just gets weirded out. It just gets whacked out because I don't even know what my accent is because it's definitely not super Irish, tell you that much. So like, you know, definitely your individual factors come into play, so I understand that. But the US, I always thought it was just like one accent, but this is just a massive wake-up call. I didn't even know any of this. Let's get it going, guys.
In a very real way, accent is identity. Different people from the same place have more or less localizable accents, and that usually has to do with identity too. Now, on some of our stops, we're going to be looking at some of the most distinctive and interesting local features, but it doesn't mean that everyone from there has that accent or has it to the same degree. Okay. I'm also going to have some linguists and language experts from around the continent join me today to lend their expertise in some of these areas.
Hi, I'm Megan Figueroa.
Hi, I'm Nicole.
Peace. I'm Son Michaud.
Hi, I'm Kalina.
Hi, I'm Amani Doran.
One of the things you'll notice along the way is that accents often don't follow political boundaries, especially ones like state lines. They'll follow major geographical boundaries, things like mountains for sure, but what regional accent differences mostly reflect is settlement patterns and contact. Historically isolated communities like Ocracoke Island in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, or the Sea Islands in the Lowcountry in Georgia, can have really distinctive speechways. They've had the time and isolation necessary to diverge and develop them. That's the other thing that makes for accent variety.
I'm thinking about why Ireland's accent is so diverse, because like the isolation, it's an island. If you live on an island, you can only get there by boat or by plane. And back in the day, like hundreds of thousands of years ago, they didn't have planes and boats and all this type of thing. Well, they had boats, I suppose, but it wasn't like crazy, you know, it wasn't like Ryanair was taking people around, like, you know, like kind of crazy differences. So
variety. Time. There's a lot more accent diversity in the British Isles, for example, where there are local populations that have been speaking English in their particular way for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, like look at that, guys. That's crazy. So just want to take Ireland because, you know, I don't really care about the UK. You know, UK suck. No, I'm just kidding, guys. UK's okay, but it says Hibernian English, Dublin accent, South Ulster, Mid Ulster, Belfast, Ulster Scots. Yeah, like people in Donegal, Northern Ireland speak way different than people in Galway. People in Galway speak way different than people in Cork. People in Cork speak way different than people in Dublin. So it's really crazy, guys. Very crazy that there's so many different accents so close together because there's like different settlements, you know.
And there's more accent diversity on the east coast of the US than there is west of the Mississippi. It's been settled by English speakers longer. The first places English was spoken in North America were Roanoke, Jamestown, and of course, Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims landed in 1620. So let's start there.
I don't know anything about that, but I know they immigrated from like England and stuff.
The Pilgrims spoke with what we call rhotic accents, meaning they said all their R's. In fact, so did almost all English speakers in 1620, including the ones in England. That's right, a Southern English accent might have used to sound something like this. It was only in the late 18th century that fashionable young people in and around London started dropping their R's, and from there the trend spread to America. Now, north of Plymouth Rock, we have Harvard Yard, one of the places you might hear a Boston accent today. The stereotypical Boston accents, of course, are non-rhotic, meaning no R sounds in park your car in Harvard Yard. Let's all get in the
Oh, damn. Dude, the only thing I know about Boston, bro, what's that movie, The Town? I've seen The Town. I've seen one of the movies, Matt Damon, and that movie where he's like a genius in Harvard and he solves that math equation. Like those movies with that like real Boston accent. You know, that accent's really cool, actually. I feel like that's gotta be like developed from like Irish people, because I feel like an Irish accent and that Boston accent is very yeah, it's very kind of like not similar, but it's kind of like a little bit. I feel like that a little bit.
Get in the car and head south down the coast now into Rhode Island. Traditional Rhode Island accents here are still non-rhotic, but there's a key vowel difference. The placement for that vowel sound in park your car in Harvard Yard. We call this the start vowel. In Boston, it's usually pretty fronted. Park your car in Harvard Yard. In Rhode Island, it's back. Park your car in Harvard Yard. Rhode Island accents
That is wild.
was shaped by a lot of Irish and Italian immigrants.
I told you. I've never watched this before. I knew it. I knew that the Boston accent is like, it's not similar to like, you know, Irish accents, but it is very similar. I feel like Irish people, when they went over like the 1800s, 1700s, whatever, 1620, you know, whenever the Plymouth Rock thing happened, the immigrants, I feel like a lot of people from Ireland, because a lot of like people from the West Coast, they have that real thick kind of like, how you getting on now, Jazz? Oh, yeah, it's a good day. Like really thick Irish accent that I don't have, but a lot of people, you know, have that around here. When they moved to somewhere like Boston or something, that accent is very similar. That's crazy. I literally thought that in my head for years. I thought that because there were so many Irish people in America as well.
Rhode Island accents were shaped by a lot of Irish and Italian immigration, just like New York City. So many accents. They don't vary by borough, by the way. That's a myth. I know you guys are going to tell me to forget about it, but I'm sorry. Sociolinguists have studied this really carefully, and there just really isn't any such thing as a specifically Brooklyn or specifically Bronx accent. There certainly are a lot of different New York City accents, but they vary by socioeconomic background and by ethnicity and other aspects of group belonging and identity.
Yeah, like if you belong to an Italian mafia. No, I'm just kidding, guys. That's a stereotype, right? If an Italian mafia sounds like that. That's like from the movie The Sopranos and stuff.
More than by neighborhood or by borough. They're historically non-rhotic, though that's changing some in the youngest generations for sure. Here's something fun most of them have in common. The tongue tip hits the teeth, or close to them, on TD and N sounds instead of, you know, a little further back. So you can hear that.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm already 4 minutes in. This is probably my favorite video I've ever reacted to on YouTube. This is incredible, bro.
In like this kind of New York City accent, tongue tip on the teeth, Times Square, New York City, and this kind of New York accent, 22nd Street, Times Square, Dumbo, taxis, traffic, and so on. Okay, so you may have noticed that
that's absolute class.
All of these accents I've talked about so far sound pretty white. I'm going to take a
They do sound very white.
Take a pause here, and linguist Nicole Holliday is going to go a little deeper on African American English varieties. Cool. My colleague Amani Dorn is going to demonstrate some of those accents.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Nicole Holliday, and I'm a linguist. As we know, New York has all kinds of people in it. African American English has a lot of shared features across regions because of its history. So Black people in Africa were kidnapped and brought to what is now the United States. At the time, they didn't all speak the same languages. They spoke multiple different African languages. And those languages came into contact not only with each other, but those languages were also coming into contact with the English spoken by the colonizers. This created a situation where there was a really unusual learning exposure to English, right? So there are all of these languages in contact with each other. And for economic and survival reasons, the enslaved people had to, in some ways, acquire English. But the English that they were acquiring was not like what you learn in the classroom, right? It was under this really unusual situation of acquisition. So some of the features that we see in modern African American English are a result of this
Wait, hold on a second, guys. On this map, during the transatlantic slave trade, there's no England or Ireland. Where did Ireland go? What the heck is going on here? This map is wrong or something. What's going on?
It was under this really unusual situation of acquisition. So some of the features that we see in modern African American English are a result of this contact between the African languages as well as the English spoken by colonizers, and those features have persisted over generations. After slavery was legally ended, the majority of African Americans remained in the South but experienced really extreme segregation. This led to different varieties of English being spoken in Black and white communities within the South, and even as they moved north during the Great Migration.
Nicole, how did the Great Migration influence accents?
The English that we see today spoken by African Americans has some features that have persisted throughout generations. TH stopping, so that might be using something like a D sound for where you see a written TH. So dat for that. You can hear that in the...
Oh, this is amazing. And on the, when I listen to like Southern rappers and stuff like that, that's where like the rap music is different, and a lot of people say, is it North, is it like New York rap music, is it South rap music? Is it Cali rap music? You can kind of hear, because rap music obviously came from Black culture. That's pretty much what I react to mostly on this channel. I absolutely love rap music. It's like different. You can see that the migration of people, was different in different areas, guys. This is unbelievable. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever reacted to. I've never even known any of this stuff.
This clip.
They said I could participate online. They said I could participate online.
L vocalization. So that's an L turning into a vowel in a word like pool or pull. Might sound something like pool or pull.
He said that's cool. That's cool.
We also see consonant cluster simplification. If you have a series of consonants at the end of a word, you might see them turn into just one consonant. So in a word like west, you might hear it pronounced as west.
It's been a minute, but she just left. She just left.
And anything specific?
That's so, bro. Because like the accent that I hear, like I said, from the South to New York is like so different. Wow, this is incredible.
Specific to New York?
One feature common in New York City is what we call a raised vowel in words like thought and cloth. It sounds something like aw.
Coffee without froth on top isn't coffee at all. So let's get it together.
Okay, let's go back to Eric.
Thank you, Nicole. And even that's just the tip of the iceberg for linguistic diversity in this incredibly diverse city. Around 50% of New Yorkers speak languages other than English at home. And for half of those, that language is Spanish. Megan Figueroa is here to tell us a little bit about one of those varieties, a variety linguists call New York Latino English.
New York Latino English is heavily influenced by Puerto Rican Spanish and Dominican Spanish. One remarkable feature of this variety is a light L, the sound that you would find in a word like, love, leaf.
Right, so New York Latino English speakers have a particularly light L. You can hear that in this native speaker clip.
I guess growing up, I know what it's like to not have a lie. I know what it's like to not have a lie.
In contrast to the light L, when you produce the dark L, the back of your tongue bunches. So think about the words milk and pull. The lighter L was a feature of New York Latino English. But Latinx people are a very diverse group of people, and they speak a variety of varieties. We'll get to more of those later.
Thank you, Megan. And
that was unreal, guys. Like, most of my knowledge of like Latin people Latin people speak, because we don't have many Latin. Well, we do have a lot of multicultural in Ireland. It's like 50% in Galway, where I live anyway. It's like 50% multicultural, not just Irish, native, whatever, Anglo-Saxon or whatever. But there's like, I haven't really heard a lot of Mexican people speak. So when I hear a lot of Mexican people speak or Latin American people speak, it's like from rap music, and that sound is just perfect, bro. This is amazing.
This single feature is a good contrast with other New York accents, by the way, because most other New York accents have pretty dark L's. Lots of lemon lollipops, la, I like to lick 'em. So now, as we leave New York and head south into Jersey and towards Philadelphia, we cross a major dialect boundary, the on line. Now, north of this line, most people say on, rhymes with don. South of it, they say on, rhymes with dawn. Of course, this doesn't apply at all if you rhyme dawn and dawn, only if you have two distinct pronunciations. That's called,
like, America's such a melting pot. It has so many different things. This is just wild.
the cot-caught merger, but we'll talk more about that later. There are a few major dialect areas in the U.S., and one of the biggest dividing lines is between northern dialects and midland dialects. The on line basically runs right along this boundary. So as we cross over it somewhere around Trenton, we've crossed from the north to the Midlands, dialect-wise. Now, another thing that starts to happen as we get down towards Philly is that the goat diphthong starts to move forwards in the mouth. So we get go, hoagies. You want to go get some hoagies? Go gets maybe even a little further forward as we get down to Baltimore, especially, you know, Danny Ocean. You want to go Danny Ocean on Wednesday? Let's make a quick stop in D.C., where Nicole has some really interesting stuff on the prosody of local African-American speakers.
In my research, I study prosody, which has to do with the tone and intonation of the phrase itself. In a study, I found that African American speakers may be more likely to ask a yes-no question with a level tone or a falling tone. For white speakers, we expect a rising tone in questions like these. So something like, did you do the dishes? But African American speakers may be more likely to say something like, did you do the dishes? Another feature that we see in DC, similar to New York, is the raised thought cloth vowel, that ah. This is a new feature in DC.
I will say this, guys. My best subject in school was English, and my favorite subject in school was English, guys. I love this. This is absolutely fire. I could do English for the rest of my life, just the way it's, just to speak it. It's incredible.
And we think it's part of a pattern of DC varieties becoming more like northern cities as opposed to the South. You can hear that in this clip.
Change is needed, but at what cost? At what cost? Cost.
Okay, let's go back to Eric.
Now we take a quick detour over to Pittsburgh. Yous are the only people in all of North America that smooths the mouth diphthong, except for maybe Chicago sometimes. Now, smoothing is when you take a diphthong, like ow, and smooth it out so it's just one sound, ah. Just like we have price smoothing in much of the South, so that I smooths out to just ah, price. Same thing here, except with the mouth vowel smoothing out to a long ah sound. You just want to meet downtown, go shopping for catches? Heading back over to the Delmarva.
So it's like the same as like the South, but like not very like elongating. This is, oh, bro.
Peninsula. As we head down into Virginia, we get something different happening with that same mouth diphthong. Here it's going to sound like oat, mouth, house. So it's not smoothing out here, it's raising. The tongue starts a little higher up, instead of ah, so it's like oat, a boat, house. This feature is called Tidewater raising. Something similar happens with this.
It's birthday girl!
Please, I knew they were going to talk about Canada. Please talk about Canada, guys. Because my girl has a wild accent that I think I'm picking up on the accent. But yeah, Canada, I apologize to all Americans or Canadians, whichever way you guys look at it. I know a lot of Canadians hate Americans, but and a lot of Americans hate Canadians as well. I love them both, guys. Beautiful people, beautiful women, especially. But yeah, this one should be absolutely hilarious because Canada is a wild accent. I think so anyway. It sounds very similar to the American accent, right?
This feature is called Tidewater raising. Something similar happens with this vowel in Canada, and there we call it Canadian raising, but it's essentially the same thing happening. Time to get out of the house, keep heading south. Down in North Carolina, we really start to hear pretty significant goat fronting again. So the vowel sound in boat, most, hope starts with the tongue further forwards in the mouth, o. Interestingly, goat fronting, which is now widespread in a lot of the American South, seems to have originated in North Carolina sometime in the last part of the 19th century. Remember that regional dialect boundaries don't necessarily follow political boundaries. They follow settlement patterns and contact patterns between populations. So the inland part of North Carolina, which is in the Appalachian Highlands, the original European settlers were Scotch-Irish folks and Germans moving southwest from Pennsylvania.
It's incredible because when I'm listening to Richmond, north of Richmond with Oliver Anthony, he's the most Irish-looking guy. I have like 5 friends that look identical to this guy. Big ginger beard, ginger hair, whatever. And you know, everyone's always talking about the Appalachian places where he's from. The Appalachian Mountains and stuff, a lot of Irish settlers. This is cool.
Indian settlers were Scotch-Irish folks and Germans moving southwest from Pennsylvania. Due to being relatively inaccessible and isolated for a long time, the accent is distinct from the lowlands and from the coastal areas. The isolated speech communities are fascinating because we can get some really interesting sound patterns.
It sounds exactly like Matthew McConaughey, whatever, however you say his name.
Up here you get some really dramatic face lowering, for example. So the diphthong in face starts real low, down around face, light, day. You'll also get some particular dialect features, so words and word order and grammar things that stretch way back to those original settlers from Scotland and Northern Ireland. Things like a hunting and a fishing and extra.
Hey, you're welcome. Hey, America, you're welcome for all the dialect. You know what I'm saying? You're welcome for and actually, thank you for all the dialect that I've picked up from American rap music. There you go, guys. It's like a back and forth, huh?
Sounds, too, like the R sound in wash and the H sound in hit. Get on with hit. Here's Nicole again to talk a little bit about African American speech in Southern Appalachia.
Hi again. So African Americans in Appalachia are understudied, mostly because stereotypes of Appalachia are very, very white. African Americans in Appalachia may be more likely to be rhotic, so in words like floor,
Way up there on the fourth floor, floor.
You'll get the R, whereas in other places you might get flo. African Americans in Appalachia also tend to follow the more general Southern pattern with respect to I monophthongization, ah in wide turning to ah, so you get wad. And now the map tour continues with Eric.
Thank you, Nicole. We're picking up again in North Carolina. Over in the Outer Banks, there's an even more historically isolated community. Because of a shift in shipping patterns...
This is definitely a British accent of some sort.
...in the mid-19th century, and probably also because of sympathizing with the Northern cause in the Civil War, Ocracoke Island was relatively isolated from the mainland for a long time. It developed maybe one of the most distinctive and different dialects in North America. Obliging islanders will sometimes say to tourists, well, it's high tide on the Seine side. Last night the water far, night the moon shine, no fish. Ocracoke Islanders are sometimes called high tiders because of that particularly distinctive I sound, and their accent is sometimes taken to be British or Australian.
I was gonna say that, like, dude, I was literally just about to say he sounds Australian or British or something. This is wild.
Even by Brits. Truth be told, there are some similarities with some regional English accents, including that high tide vowel sound, which is similar to both southwestern English accents like Devon or Gloucestershire, and East Anglian accents like Norfolk and Suffolk, those easternmost counties of England. Curiously, another distinctive thing about the old Ocracoke accent is it's also got a real sort of bounce to it, which is something that both those southwestern and those East Anglian accents also have in common. North Carolina is actually one of the most linguistically diverse states in the country. I want to bring in Kalina Newmark now to talk about Native American English.
Hello, my name is Kalina Newmark, and I am Talita Dene First Nations from the Northwest Territories, Canada. I come from a strong line of Dene and Métis leaders who are passionate about our language and cultural teachings. The Lumby tribe is the largest state-recognized Native American tribe in North Carolina. Lumby speakers combine and pronounce English words that distinguish them from African American and Southern speakers. Since encountering white settlers in the mid-1800s, the Lumby have carved out a dialect of English that is uniquely theirs. One interesting feature is that Lumby English speakers share vowel sounds present in the Outer Banks accent, where tide is pronounced toid. You can hear that in this native speaker clip.
Well, when he got halfway, that little ditch on this side, ditch on this side, ditch on this side.
Thank you, Kalina.
Dude, that sounds like Australian or something. That Australia, it sounds absolutely crazy.
So that Ocracoke Island high tider accent is an accent that's disappearing fast. The younger Ocracokers tend to speak much more mainstream American English. There's a popular idea that we're losing regional accents, that people are sounding more and more similar. That's true of some people in some places, especially some of these isolated communities. But it's not true across the board. There are actually plenty of accent differences that are getting more and more distinct over time.
Yeah, like if you don't want to lose your Irish accent, I suggest you just don't use the internet that much.
But of course, it's a complex picture. There are parts of the South that don't have all that much Southern about them, accent-wise. Raleigh, North Carolina, and Austin, Texas are two good examples. A lot of people from those two cities may be pretty hard to identify by their accents. Which brings us to what is sometimes called General American. What's General American? The first thing is, it's not one accent. It's basically a terrible term for a wide variety of accents that essentially don't have a lot of obvious regionally distinctive features in them.
This is why growing up, I thought all of America, Canada had the same accent. I don't understand why I thought that. This is crazy. Just too much TV, music, then YouTube when I hit like older, it's just crazy.
We're going to talk to Sun Michaud now. Sun is a native speaker of Gullah, a fascinating and really important Creole language spoken in the Low Countries in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida.
Cool.
Gullah is a language spoken in a region of the United States called the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, which extends officially from Wilmington, North Carolina, down to Jacksonville, Florida. Gullah is an Atlantic Creole, most similar with Bahamian Creole English and Bajan Creole. In fact, when I visited the Bahamas, a bunch of the local them thought that I'd been a local too. There are a variety of factors that inform the language. For instance, the secluded plantations on the Sea Island, a mixture of African languages, as well as the accents of lower class English and Irish indentured servants and slavers. European slavers was...
That's wild. So he said a lot of lower class English and Irish indentured servants. So a lot of the Irish, well, there were slaves and servants. Well, the Irish slaves that went over to the U.S. as well, kind of the accent got mixed together. This is crazy, bro.
So ill-suited for the Sea Islands environment that they would often afford long periods of solitary time to our ancestors with little to no oversight. Slavers would mismatch the languages in order to confound them and hinder their ability to organize rebellions. Now, the scheme of this tactic...
They didn't want them all speaking well because then they would be able to overthrow the guy that was in charge, right?
Was designed for our Gullah Geechee ancestors to be forced to speak English so that their overseers could be privy to their communications. But what slavers didn't predict is that this first generation English-based African pidgin would develop into a Creole, a fully mature rule-governed language of its own, much of which remains with us today due to generations of forced segregation and eventual separation by choice before the building of bridges that increased easy access to and fro. I'm going to walk you through a few distinct features of the Gullah Geechee accent. For example, the kit-foot vowels are...
Wow, this is the most interesting video I literally have ever watched on YouTube. This is amazing. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this at all. Like I said, I thought, Canada and America and, all these different places had the same accent.
A reverse for the words fish and foot to sound like fush and fit. The lot trap vowels are reversed for God and pat to sound like gad and pot. The softening of the T's, where butter and bent would sound like butter and bane. Gullah speakers also drop consonants for vowels where the two words meet. For instance, in the sentences that gal there and that boy there, the word for there, de, adds or subtracts the D depending on if there's a consonant or a vowel preceding it. The importance of accent to the Gullah Geechee language simply cannot be overstated. It is the clearest bond between ourselves and other displaced Africans throughout colonized spaces in the Black diaspora. How we sound is as important as what we say, because our accent is a statement in itself. This has been your Gullah teacher, Sun Michaud. Stay safe, and as always, we out ya. Peace.
Thank you so much, Son. So,
that's epic.
If you're keeping count, that's 6 Southern accents already, even though we're not being remotely comprehensive here, and we've only been through a few states. Lots more to come. As we get into the piney woods belt, Southern Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, and Northern Florida.
This is what everybody... I feel like most Irish people would just say, oh yeah, you have like the Northern accent, like people that speak like the people out of The Sopranos, mafia bosses or whatever, I'm walking here, that kind of stuff. And then when you get out into the South, you're like, you speak like a damn, like you're a slave owner. That's what everyone, that's what people in Europe that I've talked to anyway, that's how we think of the US. It's hilarious, guys.
Get into one of the parts of the South that's always been rhotic. A lot of the South was historically non-rhotic. That's where you get this sort of Blanche Dubois, Scarlett O'Hara kind of classical Southern accent. Yeah. You can hear that in this clip here.
I've always...
A mighty fine day there, madam.
It's depended on the kindness
strange.
You hear how there's no R in strangers?
Strange.
How would I say it? Stranger. Oh yeah. I pronounce everything. You pronounce your words.
Strange.
That's a non-rhotic accent. But that's changed, and changed fast over the last few decades. So most younger white Southerners are now rhotic. And most of the Piney Woods belt, though, they always have been. Now, Nicole talked...
This guy's incredible. He can just switch his accent from like one to the other. It's unbelievable.
...about the fact that some African-American speakers in the Southern Appalachian smooth out the I diphthong, the price vowel in some words, and we get a long I sound. But in other words, it stays a diphthong, I. And this is a pattern we find in a lot of the South. In most of the Piney Woods belt, though, there's always been what we can describe as full price smoothing, where some Southerners smooth the diphthong in words like fly, rise, and ride, but use a diphthong in rice and right. Here in the Piney Woods belt, we're going to smooth them all. Fly, rise, ride, and rice, right, life, night, and so on. There's an interesting posture thing here, too, which is that you start to get tongue tips that are very edge-focused. And what I mean by that is that instead of using this part of the tongue, the blade, for things like T and D sounds, so that there's a lot of surface contact, tuh, duh, we just use the narrow edge of the tongue, so it's a more focused contact area, tuh, duh. 10 tired turtles talk about dentists. We're going to end part 1 right here, but we're going to continue this all the way across the continent.
Oh my god, guys. Like you said, we're continuing this. This is the best thing I've ever reacted to on YouTube. Absolutely amazing. Like I said, guys, I thought it was like Canada accent was the same as the US, and then the Southern accent kind of had that sort of like, you know, mighty fine day there, madame. You know, that kind of like accent. That was it, guys. I thought the rest of the accents were all the same. Bro, my mind is blown. I need to travel more out of Ireland. I need to travel more, guys. I love you guys. I'll see you in part 2, bro.